One of the reasons for the accusing them of being fake is that they always have to put on the best show. Like,
He appeared in over 200 films. He won 3 Academy Awards, more than Marlon Brando, more than Jack Nicholson, more than any supporting actor who ever lived. His voice was the sound of the American frontier. His face was the face of every grandfather, every grizzled old-timer, every cantankerous deputy who ever drew a laugh in a John Wayne Western. And for the first 10 years of his career, nobody in Hollywood knew his name. He was a background extra, earning $7.50 a day. A face in the crowd. A man so invisible in his own movies that he once said he sneezed in the theater and missed himself on screen. What nobody knew was that 2 disasters would make this man. One was a war injury that damaged something he could never repair. The other was a kick to the face on a studio backlot that knocked out most of his teeth. He called that kick the luckiest break of his entire life. And there is one more thing almost no one remembers. The reason he won those 3 Oscars was so controversial that the Academy changed its voting rules forever because of him. This is the story of Walter Brennan, the man nobody wanted, who became the most decorated supporting actor in Hollywood history. Stay with me, because the way he got there will change the way you think about luck, talent, and what it really takes to make it in this business. Number 1. The Irishman who invented the American frontier. Here is a fact that would have stunned every person who ever watched Walter Brennan on screen. That gravelly frontier drawl, that toothless Western twang that sounded like it came straight from 100 years on the open range, was completely invented, every syllable of it. Walter Andrew Brennan was born on July 25, 1894, in Lynn, Massachusetts, a working-class Irish neighborhood just north of Boston. His parents, William and Margaret, were Irish immigrants. His father was an engineer and inventor. There was not a trace of the South or the West anywhere in his bloodline. Young Walter studied engineering at Ringe Technical High School in Cambridge. He was supposed to follow his father into a practical trade, but the blueprints could not hold him. He started performing in school plays, then drifted into vaudeville as a teenager, doing impressions and comedy routines on small stages across New England. Between shows, he worked as a bank clerk, a lumberjack, and what he later claimed was a financial reporter for a Boston newspaper. That last detail may or may not be true, because Walter Brennan had a lifelong habit of rewriting his own backstory. One biographer later wrote that separating fact from fiction in his early years was virtually impossible. Brennan told so many different versions of his youth that nobody, including his own family, could be entirely sure which ones were real. It was the first sign of a gift that would later make him famous. Walter Brennan could make you believe anything. But before Hollywood would discover that gift, a war on the other side of the world was about to take something from him that he would never get back. Number 2. The wound nobody could see. When America entered World War I, Brennan enlisted in the United States Army and was assigned to the 101st Field Artillery Regiment. He shipped out to France and served for 2 years as a private on the Western Front. He came home without a scratch, no bullet wounds, no shrapnel scars, nothing visible. But exposure to mustard gas in the trenches had done something to his vocal cords that nobody fully understood at the time. Mustard gas was a chemical weapon designed to burn tissue from the inside out. It attacked the eyes, the lungs, and the throat. In Brennan's case, it left him with a reedy, high-pitched voice that cracked and wheezed in ways a healthy voice should not. At 24 years old, Walter Brennan sounded like a man of 70, and in 1918, that seemed like nothing but a curse. He was a young veteran with a damaged voice, no career prospects, and no clear path forward. What he did not know, and what nobody could have predicted, was that Hollywood would eventually pay him a fortune for the exact voice the Kaiser's army had given him for free. But before that voice would make him rich, he would first have to lose everything he had. And that is exactly what happened next. Number 3. The decade when nobody looked twice. After the war, Brennan headed west and made a small fortune speculating in Los Angeles real estate during the early 1920s boom. For a brief window, the damaged-voiced veteran was actually doing well. Then the bottom fell out. The real estate crash of the mid-1920s wiped him out almost completely. Broke and desperate, he walked through the gates of Universal Studios in 1925 and signed on as a film extra. The pay was $7.50 a day, about $138 in today's money. Barely enough to eat. What followed was a decade of total invisibility. He appeared in serials, low-budget westerns with Tom Mix and Tim McCoy, and comedy shorts alongside the Three Stooges. He did stunt work on Bride of Frankenstein. He had uncredited walk-ons in The Invisible Man. He appeared in a lavish Universal musical called King of Jazz, and later claimed he played 9 different parts in that one film. But when he finally sat down to watch the finished picture, he said he sneezed and missed himself entirely. During those grinding years, Brennan befriended another struggling extra who was walking the same casting offices and hearing the same rejections. A tall, quiet young man from Montana named Gary Cooper. The two nobodies shared the same waiting rooms, the same $7 days, the same empty pockets. Neither one had any reason to believe their luck would ever change. One of them would become the biggest movie star in the world. The other would become so dangerous on screen that the biggest movie star in the world would one day try to quit a film rather than act beside him. But that was still years away. And before Walter Brennan could become dangerous, he needed one more disaster. The kind of disaster that would make a normal man quit the business forever. Number 4. The kick that changed Hollywood. Around 1932, during a fight scene on a low-budget western, another actor kicked Brennan squarely in the face. The blow knocked out most of his teeth. For a 38-year-old extra with no real credits and a damaged voice, this should have been the end of the road. Instead, Walter Brennan did something that nobody else in Hollywood would have thought to do. He went to a dentist, got himself a set of removable false teeth, and discovered that he had stumbled onto the greatest trick in the history of character acting. With the teeth in, he looked like a perfectly normal middle-aged man. With the teeth out, he could instantly transform into a man of 70 or 80. The jaw collapsed. The cheeks caved in. The face aged 40 years in a matter of seconds. He started walking into auditions and asking directors a 2-word question that became legendary in the industry. With or without? Meaning teeth. With them in, he could play a ranch hand, a soldier, a working man. Without them, he became a wizened old prospector, a frontier judge, a toothless Civil War veteran. Directors had never seen anything like it. Brennan called that kick the luckiest break in the world. He said he looked all right off the set, but when necessary, he could take the teeth out and suddenly look about 40 years older. In an industry that worshipped youth, Walter Brennan had turned aging into a weapon. He now had a voice damaged by war and a face he could age on command. All he needed was someone powerful enough to notice. And in 1935, that is exactly who showed up. Number 5. The cab driver who stole the movie. In 1935, producer Samuel Goldwyn was filming The Wedding Night, starring Gary Cooper, Brennan's old friend from the $7 days. Brennan was hired for a minor role, a cab driver, a few lines, a few scenes, nothing more. But something happened on that set that nobody planned. Brennan's performance was so natural, so completely effortless, that Goldwyn could not stop watching him. Take after take, the man playing the cab driver was more interesting than the scene he was in. Goldwyn pulled the director aside and told him to expand the role. By the time filming wrapped, the cab driver had become a supporting character, and Goldwyn had signed Walter Brennan to a long-term contract. That same year, director Howard Hawks cast Brennan in Barbary Coast. It was the beginning of the most important creative relationship of Brennan's career. Hawks was known for getting performances out of actors that other directors could not find, and he recognized something in the toothless extra from Massachusetts that a decade of casting directors had missed entirely. Brennan later described his approach to acting with a line that tells you everything about how he worked. He said, "My advice to actors is very simple. Do your acting, son, but do not get caught at it." That philosophy, invisible craftsmanship, would carry him to a place nobody in Hollywood had ever reached before, and it would happen faster than anyone imagined. Number 6. the record that changed the rules forever. In 1936, Brennan appeared in Come and Get It, a Samuel Goldwyn production that began under Howard Hawks and was finished by William Wyler after Goldwyn fired Hawks over creative differences. Brennan played Swan Bostrom, a Swedish lumberman, aging decades on screen in a performance that required him to be both a young man and an old man in the same film. On March 4, 1937, at the 9th Academy Awards ceremony, something happened that had never happened before. The Academy presented its very first award for Best Supporting Actor, and the first name ever engraved on that award belonged to a man who had spent 10 years earning $7.50 a day as an extra, Walter Brennan. 2 years later, he won again for Kentucky, a Technicolor horse racing drama in which he played a cantankerous elderly horse breeder so convincingly that audiences refused to believe the actor was only 44 years old. Then, in 1940, he won a third time for The Westerner, playing the self-appointed hanging Judge Roy Bean opposite Gary Cooper. That third win set off a firestorm. Here is what most people do not know. In the early years of the Academy, anyone in the industry could vote, including extras and bit players. And Walter Brennan, as a beloved former extra, had massive support from that voting bloc. Thousands of background actors who remembered him from the Universal lot, who had shared lunch tables with him, who saw him as one of their own, voted for him year after year. His third consecutive win triggered such a backlash among the leading actors and studio executives that the Academy stripped extras of their voting rights permanently. They changed the rules of the Oscars because of Walter Brennan. He was nominated a fourth time the following year for Sergeant York, the film where his old friend Cooper won his first Best Actor Oscar. But with the extras locked out of the vote, Brennan never won again. 3 wins, 3 nominations, 3 for 3, and he still holds that record. No actor, male or female, has ever won 3 Best Supporting Actor Oscars. He and Katharine Hepburn are the only actors in history to win 3 Oscars on 3 consecutive nominations. But the Oscars were just the beginning, because what Walter Brennan did next would prove he was more than a trophy winner. He was the most feared scene partner in the business. Number 7. The man every leading star wanted and feared. Howard Hawks later told a story about Walter Brennan that explains everything. After the filming of Red River in 1948, a man walked up to Hawks at a Hollywood event. Hawks did not recognize him. The man looked perfectly ordinary, middle-aged, well-dressed, nothing remarkable. Then the man reached into his mouth, removed his false teeth, and said, "Do you recognize me now?" It was Brennan. Even the director, who had made 3 films with him, could not pick him out of a crowd without the old man disguise. In Red River, Brennan played Groot Nadine, the toothless cook and sidekick to John Wayne on the greatest cattle drive in movie history. Hawks wrote a running gag where Brennan's character loses his store-bought teeth to a Native American chief in a poker game. And for the rest of the film, Wayne cannot understand a word he says. Brennan played it so naturally that audiences believed they were watching a real old-timer, not a 54-year-old actor from Massachusetts who sounded nothing like that in real life. In To Have and Have Not, in 1944, he played the Rummy Eddie alongside Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall in her first film. He delivered the movie's most memorable running gag, repeatedly asking anyone who would listen whether they had ever been bitten by a dead bee. Bogart, one of the most dominant screen presences in history, could not keep the audience's eyes off Brennan. In Rio Bravo in 1959, he played Stumpy, the limping deputy helping John Wayne hold a jail against impossible odds. Hawks gave Brennan a distinctive limp for the character, and Brennan found it so effective that he later recycled that exact limp for his next major role. And then there was the villain turn that nobody expected. In John Ford's My Darling Clementine in 1946, Brennan played Old Man Clanton, the cold-blooded cattle-rustling patriarch who orders the murder of Wyatt Earp's youngest brother. It was one of the rare times audiences saw the beloved old-timer play genuine evil, and it worked precisely because he looked like everybody's grandfather. You trusted that face. And that trust made the betrayal devastating. Off-screen, not every leading man found Brennan so charming, On the set of Bad Day at Black Rock in 1955, Brennan clashed bitterly with Spencer Tracy over politics. Tracy was a liberal. Brennan was a fierce conservative. During one heated exchange, Brennan reportedly held up 3 fingers at Tracy, reminding him that he had 3 Oscars to Tracy's 2. It was not exactly subtle, but it was pure Walter Brennan. He once said something that explained exactly why he was so effective. He said, "I am not a glamour boy, and I never get the girl. I like to play old people, because there is something to them." Did you ever see anybody under 30 with any real character or expression in his face? But what nobody expected was that a 3-time Oscar winner would voluntarily walk away from the big screen and gamble everything on a medium that most film actors considered beneath them. Number 8. The gamble that made him a household name. By the mid-1950s, television was still considered a step down for serious film actors. The big names avoided it. The studios looked down on it. A 3-time Academy Award winner doing a weekly sitcom would have been considered career suicide. Walter Brennan did not care. In 1957, at 63 years old, he took a deal to star in The Real McCoys, a comedy about a stubborn West Virginia family transplanted to a California farm. Brennan played Grandpa Amos McCoy, a mule-headed patriarch who believed he was right about everything and everyone else was wrong. He co-produced the show through his own production company, giving him a financial stake that most TV actors never had. The show ran 6 seasons and 224 episodes, first on ABC, then its final season on CBS. At its peak, during the 1960 to 1961 season, it ranked number 5 in the Nielsen ratings, with roughly 13 million Americans tuning in every week. It helped launch the entire wave of rural comedies that dominated the 1960s, from The Andy Griffith Show to The Beverly Hillbillies to Green Acres. Without Grandpa Amos, none of those shows might have existed. But behind the scenes, the show nearly fell apart. Co-star Kathleen Nolan, who played Luke's wife Kate, demanded better contract terms after the 5th season. When the negotiations collapsed, she walked. The show jumped from ABC to CBS for its final year, where it was thrown against Bonanza in the ratings and never recovered. Despite 6 seasons of massive popularity, Brennan received only 1 Primetime Emmy nomination in 1959 for Best Actor in a Leading Role in a Comedy Series. He lost to Jack Benny. The man with 3 Oscars never won a single Emmy. It was one of the few honors that eluded him his entire life. But the strangest chapter of Walter Brennan's career was not the television gamble. It was what he did after the show ended, and nobody saw it coming. Number 9. Number 5 on the Billboard charts at 67. In 1960, while The Real McCoys was still on the air, Brennan walked into a recording studio and made a record. Not a comedy album, not a novelty act, a spoken-word single called Dutchman's Gold, backed by the orchestra of Billy Vaughn. It cracked the top 40, and it gave him an idea. 2 years later, at the age of 67, Brennan released a single called Old Rivers on Liberty Records. It was not a song in any traditional sense. It was a recitation, Brennan narrating the story of an old farmer and his mule named Midnight over a gentle musical backdrop by the Johnny Mann Singers. His voice, that damaged, wheezy, cracking instrument that mustard gas had given him 4 decades earlier, carried every word. It sounded like a grandfather telling you a bedtime story, and America could not get enough of it. Old Rivers climbed to number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 for the week of May 26, 1962. Kept from the top of the chart only by Ray Charles and his legendary recording of I Can't Stop Loving You. It reached number 3 on the country chart and number 2 on easy listening. At 67 years old, Walter Brennan became the oldest living person to score a top 5 pop hit. He followed it with another charting single, Mama Sang a Song. Later that same year, 3-time Oscar winner, television icon, and now a pop chart hitmaker at an age when most men had been retired for years. There seemed to be nothing Walter Brennan could not do. But behind the beloved image of the folksy old-timer, there was a very different man. A man whose private beliefs would have shocked the millions of Americans who thought they knew him. Number 10. The man nobody really knew. Off-screen, Walter Brennan was a devoted family man. He married Ruth Caroline Wells in 1920 at the age of 26, and they remained together for 54 years until his death. They had 3 children and a marriage that was remarkably stable by Hollywood standards. In 1940, at the height of his Oscar-winning fame, Brennan purchased a 12,000-acre cattle ranch near Joseph, Oregon. He did not buy it as a vanity property. He ran it as a real working ranch, raising cattle and investing in the small town, building a motel, a movie theater, and a general store. While earning $5,000 a week from his film work, he built a private empire that had nothing to do with Hollywood. By the time of his death, his estate was estimated at $10 million, making him one of the wealthiest character actors who ever lived. But the money and the ranch were not the secret. The man America loved as the gentle, toothless Grandpa Amos was a fierce political hardliner. A devout Roman Catholic and member of the John Birch Society, Brennan campaigned for Barry Goldwater in 1964. He supported Ronald Reagan's 1966 run for governor of California, and in 1968 he backed George Wallace's presidential campaign. He kept a bunker on his Moore Park ranch, stocked against what he believed was an inevitable Soviet invasion. He was convinced that the civil rights movement and the anti-war protests were directed by communists. And according to biographer Carl Rollison, his reaction to certain events of the 1960s was so extreme that crew members who witnessed it never forgot. There was perhaps the most striking contradiction of all. The man who built his entire career playing the kind of Americans you would want as your neighbor, your grandfather, the man next door who always did the right thing, held views that would have stunned the millions who loved him. Walter Brennan continued working into his 70s. He starred in The Guns of Will Sonnet from 1967 to 1969, appeared in Disney family films like The Gnome Mobile, and delivered a comic turn alongside James Garner in Support Your Local Sheriff in 1969. His last years were spent at his ranch in Moore Park, California, as emphysema, the same disease that slowly destroys the lungs, took its toll on a body that had been breathing Hollywood dust and studio air for half a century. He was offered a role in one final Disney film, Herbie Rides Again, but he was too ill to take it. On September 21, 1974, Walter Brennan died in Oxnard, California. He was 80 years old. He was laid to rest at San Fernando Mission Cemetery in Los Angeles. His final film, The Western Smoke in the Wind, was released the following year. He left behind over 230 film and television roles spanning 5 decades, 3 Academy Awards that still stand as an unmatched record, a television show that changed American comedy, a hit record at 67, and a personal life so far removed from his screen image that the two men, the one the audience loved and the one who actually existed, might as well have been Om. And it all started with a boy from Lynn, Massachusetts, who had 0 Western accent, 0 frontier upbringing, and 0 reason to believe he would ever set foot in Hollywood. A boy who went to war and came home with a broken voice, who lost his teeth on a backlot and called it luck. Who asked directors a simple question, with or without, and turned that question into the most remarkable career any supporting actor has ever had. Hollywood was full of leading men with perfect smiles and perfect voices. But there was only ever one, Walter Brennan. And the greatest trick he ever pulled was making every person in America believe he was exactly who he was not.